Alright everyone, hey, welcome back to my channel. This one here, critical thinking, more critical thinking. This one is called the Bali drugs charge. Now, in most countries, especially I know in the United States, you can get caught with drugs and it's not really a big deal. You may go to jail, may probation, a fine. You may go to prison for a few years, depending on how many drugs that you've had. But if you are aware, which I kind of hope you are, especially if you're a traveler, there are some countries out there, especially in Asia, they don't tolerate drugs. If you have a little bit of drugs, you go to prison for life, and you may even be executed, you may lose your life. Bali is such a country. Now, again, I'm hoping that you will post your comments down below. Here is the situation. And now remember, you have to make a decision. You can't run away from this situation. You must make a decision, and you must make a decision quickly. Here we go. You're on vacation in Bali with your wife and your 18-year-old son. You've been there for a week and now you're ready to go home. All three of you are at the airport getting ready to board the plane when an armed officer and a sniffer dog approaches you and your luggage. You have all of your bags stacked on the sidewalk, and the dog sniffs at both your wife's bag and your bag. No problem. And the dog passes them over. However, when he gets to your son's bag, he begins to get a little bit more active. You look over at your son, and he's looking a little bit nervous. Why? Please tell me you didn't do something stupid. Not in this country. You know he smoked a little marijuana in his time, but generally he's a good kid. And you certainly didn't think he'd be stupid enough to bring it back on the plane with him, especially when you can get drugs everywhere. I mean, in the United States, you can get it anywhere, anytime. At first, you feel angry that he would do such a stupid thing. And you start planning your responsibility speech, because you know once you get on the airplane, your son is going to get a very long lecture on responsibility. But then you realize, oh no, that you are in Bali, and they have a zero tolerance on drugs, which means your son could be in jail for life or worse, executed, if he does have some illegal materials in his bag. You look at your wife and you realize she has come to the same conclusion, and her face just lost all the color in her face. She's gone pale because she's very scared. Like, oh no, what is my son going to prison for life in a foreign country? The armed officer accompanying the dog is beginning to look more stern with every sniff the dog takes, and looks directly at you and asks you, would you please open this bag? As an officer, you have no choice. You have to open that bag. So you open the bag. And as the officer begins to take things out, he's taking things out one at a time, whatever all these things are, you see, oh no, to your horror, that there is a small quantity of marijuana stashed in your son's belongings. The officer looks at you and says, whose bag is this? Because there's no tags on the bags. You don't have any tags, so it doesn't have a name. You realize you have to answer this officer's question. But the answer won't be very easy. Do you say it's your bag? And if it is, your family is going to watch you get handcuffed and taken off to prison in a foreign country. Like same will happen if it's your wife's or your son's. And you see your wife in the corner of your eye, and she's about to step forward and claim this bag as her own. That means you have probably seconds to make a decision. Because as soon as if you let your wife step forward and claim the bag, that's what the officer is going to believe. Therefore, take your wife to jail. So you're going to watch your wife taken handcuffed and probably taken off to a prison, a foreign prison in a foreign country. Same thing with your son or you. So what do you say? You are standing there in front of the officer with this open bag. The officer is standing there with a little bit of marijuana, and they ask you, whose bag is this? Now, before you answer that question, there are a lot of little things you probably need to think about. First, if you claim the bag, well, you're probably, it depends on your age, but your son's 18, which would put you at a minimum at 40, because unless you had your son when you were like 16 or 17 years old, but for the sake of this, let's say you were in your 20s when you gave birth to your son, which would put you in your 40s. Your life is over. You are going to, all those dreams and hopes and wishes you had when you get home are no more. Your life will be completely over at this point. You'll be taken off to a Bali prison and probably stay there for the rest of your life. Is that what you want? And your son, you know it's his bag, but he's 18. He hasn't really lived his life. So would you say, oh, it's my son's bag? Or do you think your son should pay for his, pay the consequences for his actions? I mean, I don't want my life to end because somebody else did something stupid. Or do you? Would you sacrifice the rest of your life so that your son can have a good life and continue having a good life? Or do you say, hey, sorry, you did this and you're going to have to pay the consequences? Same for your wife. You must remember when you go home, if you allow your wife to claim that bag, all those great times you've had together with your wife have just come to a screeching halt. You won't have any good times anymore. So it's not an easy decision to make. But what decision would you make? And you have only seconds before your wife claims that bag. So do you say, it's my bag, it's my wife's bag, it's my son's bag? One of you is not getting on that airplane. And that was going to be a very sad thing, but one of you will not be returning home. Which one will it be? You, your wife, or your son? I'm not going to share my opinion of what I would do in this situation, but I would be very interested to read what your comments, what you would do in this situation, because it's a tough situation. And let's say, okay, I'm going to add this, but let's say you make your son claim that bag. How often would you return to Bali to visit him in prison? And I guess that depends on where you are in the world. Are you in Europe? Do you live in the US, Canada, North America, South America, Africa? So I guess it depends on how close you are to Bali and how expensive the trip would be. But how often would you visit your son? Or your wife, or how often would you want your wife and son to visit you while you're in that prison? So I'm going to go ahead and post this one as well and let you share your opinions on this, which I think would be very interesting. So please don't hesitate to write your comments below. All right, I'm looking forward to reading them. All right, until my next critical thinking.